Welcome back. Time now for the press preview. Our first look at the front pages as they arrive. Let's see what's making the headlines with the columnist Carole Malone and the editor of The Courier, David Clegg. Carole will be there, I am reliably informed, in just a moment. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. But let's take you through the front pages that we have. Starting with the Daily Telegraph, it leads with Owen Patterson's resignation as an MP amidst Conservative anger at Number 10's handling of sleaze allegations against him. The front of the Metro has the same story. Their headline, Tory own goal. Let's see what they did there. Tories plunged into crisis after sleaze rules U-turn. That the front of The Guardian. They're also covering Owen Patterson's resignation. The Eye, the same story. The headline, Day of Chaos in Downing Street. The Yorkshire Post headline reads this. Sponsors ditch club as racism scandal deepens, as Yorkshire County Cricket Club is banned from hosting international matches. The FT, you might expect it to go this way, it leads with the Bank of England sending investors scrambling by keeping interest rates on hold. Turn now to the Daily Mirror. They have a different lead entirely, asking the question, how many more victims in response to David Fuller, who admitted murdering 2 young women. The Daily Mail also leading on the David Fuller story with the words, horror at the morgue. As mentioned, we are joined tonight by David Clegg, shortly Carole Malone. David, it's good to see you. It's just you and I for the moment anyway. So let's dive straight on in, shall we? The front page of the Metro, the story, frankly, I had a slightly later start than I usually do. I didn't watch the breakfast news this morning, looked at the news at around about 11:30. Frankly, I've seen some pretty dangerous and bad days for governments in my time. This is up there.
I can't remember quite such a shambles, even with a government that's been prone to the occasional shambles. It really was an extraordinary day today, from last night's seeming belief that this was a kind of stunt they could pull to how quickly they capitulated through the course of today. It really has been a tawdry episode, and many of the newspapers are leading on it today. And I think the concerning thing for Boris Johnson and the Conservative government is that they're not finding any allies anywhere in the press or wider media. As far as I can see, the wide consensus is that they should never have tried to pull this stunt to get Owen Patterson off. It showed a remarkable lack of judgment. It showed that they don't think the rules should apply to them, and that also I think they seem to have been surprised by the strength of feeling in the public reaction. There's a bullet point on the cover of The Eye tomorrow, which is also covering the story on the front page, which says that they were taken aback by the reaction, which just seems an incredible misreading of the public mood and the sense of right and wrong that the public tend to have, that they could have miscalculated so badly here. And it does feel to me like something that is going to have cut through, something that I think speaks to the character of the government, speaks to the character of the Prime Minister, and I think could end up really hurting their reputation.
Pleased to say, David, that Carole has joined us. Good to see you, Carole. I mean, what do you make of all of this? No matter how the government tries to spin it, this was a crunching gear change, U-turn, I mean, whatever analogy you want to use. It's embarrassing does not come close to describing this.
You're too right. You know, I haven't seen this kind of parliamentary chicanery since Brexit, and before that, the expenses scandal. Back then we saw the greed, the fraud, the sheer effrontery of MPs thinking it was fine to spend taxpayers' money on moats and plasma TVs. But this has taken us right back there. It's like they've learned nothing, you know. MPs now have no more respect for us now than they had back then. They said that this sort of stuff would never happen again. Now it is. You know, they're no principled. The Tory government is supposed to be the standard bearer for the rule of law. This is not. This is them changing the rules to try and get one of their people out of a mess. You know, it's literally sticking two fingers up at the electorate and saying, the rules don't apply to us. And I just heard the tail end of what David was saying there. He's absolutely right. Boris backed Owen Patterson on this, and the government was whipped into voting to change these rules, which it's astonishing he doesn't understand his own MPs, his own parliament enough to know that there would be uproar over this. If the standards bodies was so bad, why wait till now to change them? Why weren't they changed before? This woman that they're all going on about, Catherine Stone, may well be anti-Tory, anti-Brexit and anti-Boris and all the rest of it. But why wait till now to have a go at her when Owen Patterson is in trouble? He had to go. He has gone. He's still not really accepting responsibility for all of this. He's saying it's all a big mistake and he's totally innocent, which, the committee says he's blatantly not. But this is a dark, dark day, not just for the government, but for democracy.
I do want to move on to another story in just a second. So briefly, if you can, David. Was the mistake that the Conservatives made in all of this conflating the two issues? Because I know from conversations I've had with MPs on the other side of the chamber that there is a desire amongst a substantial group of parliamentarians to reform this process.
Yeah, I think that has been one of the mistakes they made. Interestingly, the Scottish Conservative leader, Douglas Ross, dodged the vote yesterday. And when I was speaking to him yesterday and asked him why he hadn't voted, it was that was the reason that he gave, that he didn't think the two things should be tied in, that the wider questions about the process should be separated from the specific case. But I think actually it's a more endemic problem than that. It's not a one-off. It's not a mistake on process. I feel that, the simple truth of the matter is that we have a prime minister who's spent his life getting away with not having to take responsibility for the consequences of his actions. And he feels that is a charmed life he leads, and is surprised when he finds out that some actions will actually have consequences. Yep. I'm afraid that is the overall message from this episode, as far as I can see.
Carole, the front of the Daily Mirror today, just every so often a story comes along that stops you in its tracks just because of the detail contained therein. The story of David Fuller, frankly, is one of those.
It is, and you've got to forgive me because I've only just received this stuff from you guys. But this was for 34 years. This guy who now was one of Britain's most prolific sex offenders believed he had got away with the murder of 2 women and the sexual assault of dozens of corpses. It was only after the breakthrough of DNA sample that led detectives to him. It is astonishing. He's the 2009 reinvestigation was boosted by an enhanced DNA sample from one of his victims' tights. But the fact that he got away with this for so long is astonishing. Checks on a national database showed a close match to 90 people, which police detectives were able to whittle down, eventually identifying a relative of Fuller before finding the man himself. Astonishing. And I think it was something like, how many million images? 14 million images on his hard drives of really distressing sexual offences. This is astonishing. It's breathtaking, mind-blowing. There's not enough adjectives to describe it.
David,
I thought that...
David, just before you come in, David, the question on the front page, how many more victims? We understand, any of us have covered this type of story. Recidivism is a big issue when it comes to sexual offending, and that is a very fair question to be asking.
Yes, and I think they're aware of 78 identified victims, and they think it could be hundreds more. They really have no idea. I thought that your colleague Jason Farrell's interview there with the mother of one of the victims was not only really powerful and really emotional, but actually brought out those questions very well about they have no idea about how many victims they are, but also there's been a great failure there. How did this guy get access for so long to this morgue? How was he allowed to carry this out in secret for so long? Why wasn't there proper security or proper processes in check? Why weren't these bodies that should be looked after being kept properly? It really is a case that is not only horrifying, but also raises some troubling questions, I think. Yeah, questions which I'm sure many papers will be looking to answer at some point. Carole, David, we will pause there just briefly. Coming up after the break, we'll be taking a look at the front of the Telegraph. Their headline: the Prime Minister's pledge ignores tree burning for electricity. We'll explain that after this.
Welcome back to the papers, David and Carole, still with us. Well, in fact, Carole's not. I don't know where she's gone. David, back to you. Let's go to the front page of the Telegraph. There she is. Good to see you, Carole. Sorry, we just put you on the wrong side of the screen. David, take us to the front of the Telegraph. The story on the right there. The Prime Minister ignoring tree burning. Explain this one to me.
Yeah, this is a story that's on the front of the Telegraph. It's raising concerns about one of the big key pledges made at COP26 to halt and reverse tree loss that Boris Johnson had signed up to, and it's flagging up concerns about the biomass plant Drax in North Yorkshire, which I think it burns fuel pellets made from processed wood, which some scientists are calling, a fossil fuel, really a fourth fossil fuel. So they're raising concerns about, does this take into account of this? Will this be included in the pledge? And I think it's raising the specific issue about whether this type of plant is compatible with the pledges being made at COP26. But I think it also raises that bigger question that we're having. I think there's a generally positive atmosphere at the minute about what has been achieved at COP, that they're maybe moving towards achieving a reasonable solution. I know that the climate envoy, John Kerry, was speaking very positively today in Glasgow about being on the brink of a real breakthrough. But of course, as with all these announcements and all these types of events and conferences, the devil will be in the detail, and it can take some time to process through exactly what has been achieved and what the commitments could mean.
I think you might have a point there. Carole, take us, though, to the Yorkshire Post, and another one of these stories that is really just makes no sense.
I don't have it. Well, I don't have it.
Well, what do you make of the English Cricket Board cancelling international matches being played at Headingley after Yorkshire County Cricket Club? Well, frankly, they didn't get their house in order. I mean, this racism scandal has been around for a couple of days now, and it does rather feel that the ECB might not have made this decision had they not been forced into it.
Well, I can tell you, all I know, having read it earlier, a bit of it earlier today, but having not sent from you guys, it's just that it's been various sponsors are abandoning them. They're not going to be handling international cricket matches anymore. It's all over the crisis of their handling of the Azim Rafiq racism scandal, where there was an investigation into that, and it was. He had been called the P name repeatedly at the club, and the investigation dismissed that as banter. Now the cricketing world is taking a very, very dim view of this, quite rightly, and is telling the club to get its house in order, basically.
David.
It does feel like they've had to be dragged towards that conclusion. I think the report did find, there was serious problems with racism in the club, yet they didn't censor anybody. Nobody was disciplined, and it has, I think, really taken a public backlash, a few days of pretty sustained media coverage, key sponsors pulling out, and just a general sense that they haven't dealt with this appropriately for them to take action. And I think that could really backfire on them, because it's going to have almost more severe consequences now than it would have done if they'd just been upfront from the beginning and said what the issues had been in the past and what they were going to do to put them right.
Yeah, it feels like it's a story that is going to run for just a little bit longer. David, Carole, good to see both of you again. We will see you just a little bit later. But for now, thanks very much indeed.